Hey everybody, this is Robert back with the Dynamis pod, and on today's episode I want to talk to you a little bit about diagnostics gone wrong. I had a student reach out to me recently and wanted to have his truck looked at, and apparently he had already had it taken over to a local dealership of the same brand, and they had it, looked at it, gave him an estimate. He was a little bit suspicious of it and went ahead and towed it back out of there and brought it back over to the school. After that, brought the vehicle in and started to look at it. So his main complaint was that after he had unhooked the battery and then welded on the back of the frame and then hooked it back up, he couldn't get the vehicle to crank over. So the lights and everything on the dash would come on. If you turned the key, his tuner would light up, but nothing else would happen. So as I was looking at the vehicle, I asked a couple other probing questions and found out that once he took it to the dealer, he had them look at it. And apparently they were claiming that it needed a PCM and said that it was going to be around 3,795, I believe. And all of these documents, I took pictures of this. I kind of made a case study out of it. I'll put all of those into this video periodically. You get to see those. I will be talking over them, of course. But what I found was quite disturbing, actually. And I've made a couple posts about it now on Facebook. And to be honest, I'm kind of at a loss for words of how he was treated, how the system kind of let him down at the dealership. And before anyone says, well, he should have been able to figure it out on his own, students these days, and much like it was when I was young, you get thrown a lot of information. And I can't really fault the student on this. He done as best as he could. And when you find out what it was, you're going to say, wow, I can't believe that no one figured that out. Even being at the dealership, like I said, that was the thing that was kind of worrisome to me, of kind of where we're at in the industry right now. A little bit about my background for those of you that may not have watched before or don't know who I am. I've been in the automotive industry now for 35 years. I've also been able to obtain ASE master level auto technician status with an A9, auto and light truck diesel. And also right now I'm studying to do L1 and L3. So L1 is advanced diagnostics and then L3 is EV cars. So I've done about 18 years of diagnostic work. And I think the earliest I ever was able to use an oscilloscope would have been in 2002, 2003, in that era. And I was lucky enough to work at a place that wanted to make sure that we were working on vehicles the proper way, and have been able to program some vehicles all the way back to about the same period of time. We used to use the Tech 2 on the General Motors vehicles and use the SPS pass-through on those. So a little bit back to the story. Gets vehicle, takes it there. They can't figure it out. Charge him $310 to send the vehicle back out of there on a trailer. So that, like I said, is a little steep for what he actually got. So I get the vehicle inside. I go to scan it, and I had another student who was helping me out of a different class. So he was in my class. My former student was already moved on to another section of the school. And the new student, I was basically trying to use this as a teaching moment and making sure that we're doing a lot of hands-on as much as possible to make sure that they're learning real-world things that they're going to see when they get out into the world, and they can take these things that they learn in school and they can apply them in the real world. So I had the student get out the Zeus, grab the oscilloscope. I had him run over to the other part of the school and grab the 25A picoscope that I was able to sell the school when I got there. That was mine. And he brings it all back over, and we get to working on it and pop the hood. I go print power and ground distribution. Complaint was that basically no communication from the DLC, and the data link connector would not power up, would actually not communicate serial data. It would power up the scan tool, however. It would power up the dongle. So we get to looking at it, we scan it, and we do find that it has zero communication. And then after that, I grabbed the picoscope and went ahead and hooked into the serial data pins at the DLC and verified that it has zero communication, nothing coming to the DLC whatsoever. So it's flatlined on the CAN bus. Usually, a lot of times in my experience, if it will light up the scan tool, a lot of times they will talk. Well, this one wasn't talking. So went ahead and printed off of all data, the power distribution and also ground distribution, and started looking through those and went to the fuse panel up underneath the hood, the TIPM, the totally integrated power module, and found out that on, I'm pretty sure it was fuse number 22, we did have power, and we used a DVOM on that. And then as a teaching tool, I explained go and grab me a regular snap-on incandescent style light bulb circuit tester because I want to check the fuse that way also. And the student says, well, we just checked it with the voltmeter. And I said, we did. However, I want to make sure that what we're using on this has a load on it also. So I needed to light that bulb up and make sure that that bulb is lit pretty well. So he goes and gets me that tool. We bring it back over and it does, in fact, light that up. So I'm good to go on that. I've checked it 2 ways now. Move on and start running through the wiring diagram, which I'll post up here, the wiring diagrams that was laid out on the front of the vehicle. I didn't have a close-up of it, and I'm not close enough to school to get all data at this point. But basically, you move from fuse 22, and it goes up through, and it goes to fuse 28. So all of this is moving along from power distribution down through and heading to the PCM. So we end up getting to the fuse number 28, and there's no fuse 28. You heard me right. There's no fuse 28. The sockets are empty. There are terminals, female terminals down inside of the sockets in the fuse panel box, but there is 0 fuse in there. So I look in there and I find out it's supposed to have a 10 amp fuse, little red one. So it's the ATO style mini. So I go and have the student go grab me an ATO 10 amp fuse and bring it back. Went ahead and the key was still on, mind you. So I plugged the fuse in, and all of a sudden under the hood, things start little clicks, right? That's interesting. Wonder why it would do something like that. So the student had been completely afraid to even try to start it again after he noticed the first time it wouldn't start. He was afraid that he had messed something up with the vehicle after welding on it, and there are the chances that that could have happened. But once I heard everything start clicking, I went ahead and made sure that I went inside of it, pushed the clutch down, and hit the key. And this thing has a 5.9 diesel in it, so it's got a Cummins. Go ahead and do that and hit the key, and it fires right up. Like, huh, interesting. Wonder what was going on with that. This thing had been down for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days at that point. So I start reading the repair order that was laying inside the truck still, and that was a point when I started to become pretty upset. From what I could tell, the RO would have had to go through 2 or 3 people's hands at that point before it ever left the dealership. And it stated in the story that the PCM has powers and grounds, but the PCM will need to be replaced, and then it will need programmed. And the student was looking at the possible cost estimate of $3,795. Is that where we've gotten to in our industry, that we look at someone's vehicle and then we tell them something that's completely inaccurate, on the edge of lying? I would say it's a lie, that it has power and ground. There's no way it had power and ground. It may have had ground. It did not have power. There's no way it had power because the fuse was not in the box. So I hooked the scan tool back to it. I go in, I check the codes. It has data now, so it's talking. I also had a couple codes in it that were due to it not having any power. So I went ahead and cleared those 2 codes, and then I went out and drove the vehicle and brought the vehicle back. And the student had heard from another student that I was on the other side of the building with it, and I was driving it around. Of course, he was curious, what exactly happened to it? Why is it running now? What happened? What did he find, right? So he come up to me and he says, what happened to it? What did you find? Like, I've had it to the dealer. It was down 3 or 4 days. I've had other instructors looked at it. I've had other students help me with it. I couldn't figure it out. So what exactly was it? And I said, fuse number 28 was missing out of the TIPM underneath the hood. I said, I don't know who took it out. I don't know why it was out. All I know is it wasn't in there. So he tells me, oh yeah, I completely forgot. When I was welding on the rear of the vehicle, I had wanted to take the turbo timer off the vehicle that used to keep it running, of course, when you shut it off for a few minutes. And I took that fuse all the way out. He goes, it was hooked into that fuse. So I just figured it didn't need that fuse. So I went ahead and took it out. So that was his issue. His issue was self-inflicted. Now, some might say, man, that's terrible. He deserved to pay $310 to have it looked at and then go through the entire trouble. Okay, that's fine on one hand, but also it should be used as a teaching moment to other up-and-coming technicians that when you're working on a vehicle, you should make one small scientific change at a time if you're trying to diagnose a vehicle. Put your white lab coats on and do it as a scientist would. Do not change multiple variables at the same time. If you do, you may run into exactly what this fella ran into. So that is the moral of the story. I promptly explained to him that I feel like, and you may disagree with me, some of you may disagree vehemently with me, but I feel like the dealership owed him his money back for looking at it. First off, I've been in luxury automobile brands for quite some time, and I've been a service manager and also a service director of those. And I would feel embarrassed if that happened at my shop and it left that way and my technician missed that. And if someone came back to me and told me that that's what it was, and that is what's going on, and the vehicle was brought to me and it was running now when it came out on a truck before, I would have given the gentleman back his money and I apologized, because $310 in the first place. Okay, I understand that there's some out there that's telling people $400 up front. I'm not going to look at it unless you just put aside $400. I get that also. However, they've also stated that if it ended up being something that was way more simple, they wouldn't have left it. They wouldn't have left it that way. They would have charged the customer something lower than the $400. So him and his friend rode back over after school that day, went to the same dealership and told him what happened to the vehicle and asked them politely for a refund. And they told him that they'd give him back 150. Sorry. They told him they would give him back 190 of the $310, because they still had to have time in it and the technician had to look at it. That was the excuse. I'm sorry. I can't get along with that. I don't think that's right. I would have given him back his entire amount. Like I said, it's embarrassing that it would happen. And I would use it as a teaching moment inside the dealership to explain to the student, to explain to the employee that here's where we're at and this is what's happened now. Here we are. It's like the vehicle left here with an inaccurate story and we charged somebody $310 to look at their vehicle and we didn't even follow through with the basics of checking fuses. Me personally, I think that's wrong. A couple other things about the ticket, the RO, that I noticed. One, it said house technician on it when you look at the tech number. So that could have been anybody. That was probably not somebody that probably should have been looking at the vehicle. A lot of times when they run house technician on the vehicle, that's going to be an apprentice. That's going to be somebody that probably shouldn't have been looking at it in the first place. Secondly, the other wild part of it is the service advisor that was listed on the RO is the wife of one of the instructors at my own school. So this gentleman had his vehicle there before. I'm sure at some point it came up in conversation that he was a student over at the school. And I would have hoped that someone who has a husband that works there would have been a little bit more lenient when it comes to that type of thing as far as the charges that was on it. Like I said, $310. I'm all for making money, and I think places should be profitable. I've said it before in other podcasts. Profit's not a bad word, but that's a little exorbitant if you ask me. So the other thing that brings this up, that this has brought up in my mind, the last time I looked at this was about 10 years ago, and I wanted to talk a little bit about market share of auto service and market cap in our country right now. 10 years ago when I looked it up, the automotive repair industry was around $100 billion as far as market cap. That's what we spent as Americans in our country to fix automobiles, and that was the entire market. So that covered everything from a place that had 2 people in it all the way up to the largest dealerships in the country as far as service goes. So I got to looking, and yesterday I did a little bit of research and found out that now market cap is $182 billion. And also it is forecasted to go to $202 billion this year. That $182 billion number is from last year, 2024 number. 2025 is looking to be around $202 billion. And then by the year 2030, they're saying that it should be around $400 billion. That's a lot of money, folks. That's a whole bunch of money, right? So in my mind, it's like, okay, well, what is the market split? What's the market share between mom and pops, chain stores, and also dealerships, dealer service? So I looked that up also. Come to find out that dealerships right now are at 30% market share. You heard that right, 30% market share. If they're not running around with their hair on fire like it's on fire right now, they should be. And it's been that way since 10 years ago. For my money, if you're taking your vehicle in and having it looked at, or if you bought the vehicle at a place and you're wanting to take it back there, it can't just stay that way where the vehicle only stays there a couple years and then ends up in the aftermarket if the dealership wants to survive, because they're not going to be able to. With the market coming the way that it is, with the sales market going the way that it is, going direct to consumer. Cadillac has flirted with it in the past. I know that Tesla's the only way you can buy a Tesla is go on the internet and build your car, and they bring it to you like Carvana. Like, somebody needs to figure out what's going on in the industry, right? Like, they need to unravel that knot and figure it out. When I was looking, 28% is mom and pops. So they're just on the heels of the dealer service at this point. And then also everything else was chain stores. So you're literally looking at dealerships have 30% of market share, and that's all. 30%. Like I said, what are we doing? I think that it would be healthy if dealerships had great service. And I've brought this up before, and I'll say it one more time. Just because you're taking your vehicle to the dealer doesn't always mean that you're getting professional service, that you're getting the most up-to-date service. Sometimes in the aftermarkets, you're getting people that's forcing themselves into training and making sure that they're going to training, and they're getting really good at their craft. So I don't know. I don't know where you fall down at. I don't know what your mindset is as consumers and also as people that's in the industry, but leave some comments at the bottom of this video and tell people where you might be at. For my money, like I said, it'd be nice if you were able to take your vehicle in to the places that you bought them. But at this point in time, it seems like with the training that's going on, the lack thereof, I should say, at some of these places, and vehicles getting dispatched incorrectly, that comes back to dispatching. So like I said, for my money, it's like, what are people going to do, right? That's it for this episode of Dynamis Pod. Thanks for watching.